In 1775, Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet stating that the freedoms of man can only be maintained by limiting the power of government. The pamphlet was called Common Sense. In 2015, it still is Common Sense.
I'm Mark Zaccaria.
And I'm Elizabeth Smith. And this is Common Sense. This week, we are visited by Bill McCourt, Executive Director of the Rhode Island Manufacturers Association. He's here to tell us about some new legislative initiatives to improve the business climate in the Ocean State. Jeff Richard is also here to talk to us about Rhode Island schools in comparison to the nation and the world. Of course, we ask our favorite question, are you kidding me? But first, the news. Mark?
Our failed convention center casts a shadow over our proposed ball field. In the early 90s, the idea of the Providence Convention Center was sold to legislators as a no-cost improvement to the cityscape that would pay for itself and more in revenues. Proponents of the project famously asserted that it would, and I quote, not cost taxpayers a dime, unquote. The actual results show that rosy estimate to be off the mark. To date, the convention center has cost some $4.5 billion dimes, and we're just over halfway to retiring the debt. The debt incurred in our name just to build the place. We are now looking at over $760 million tax dollars to retire the capital debt, and the thing still costs $20 million per year more to operate than it brings in. You'll understand the importance of this history lesson when you remember that the man behind the convention center 25 years ago was James Skeffington. Today, that same entrepreneur is the lead owner of the Pawtucket Red Sox and the spokesman for the plan to move the team to Providence and a new stadium, courtesy of the Ocean State taxpayers. The Republican policy group of the GOP caucus in the House and Senate is studying why the convention center has become such a costly boondoggle. Common Sense thinks the answer to that question is simple. None of the estimates done in advance for the convention center were even close to being right. None of the cost estimates for either construction or operation of the facility ever came remotely true, and none of the revenue estimates did either. Spanish writer George Santayana's oft-quoted axiom applies here. Those who fail to learn from the failures of history are doomed to repeat them. Based on track record alone, Mr. Skeffington's estimate of both costs and revenues for the stadium project should be viewed with a very jaundiced eye. Common Sense thinks that the only way for this project to not cost taxpayers a dime is if our legislators ensure that we do not spend a dime on this latest welfare program for the super rich. Liz?
Anyone seen Link? In an update to our continuous campaign coverage, he seems to be MIA. According to the AP, former Rhode Island Governor Lincoln Chafee plans to announce his candidacy for the Democratic presidential nomination in a few weeks. But he's not actively raising money or putting together the infrastructure required to pay for a credible White House bid. In the months since Chafee said he was forming a campaign exploratory committee, he's made trips to the early primary states of New Hampshire and South Carolina, made calls to activists in the first caucus state of Iowa, and done several rounds of interviews with reporters. But a dozen longtime Chafee friends, former staffers, and donors told the Associated Press they'd either yet to hear from him, or when they did, he did not discuss fundraising or talk with them about how he would raise the money needed to wage a viable campaign. I was surprised not to have heard from either him or someone in his circle working on this potential campaign. I've known him for a very long while, said Bill Verica, a gallery owner from Newport who's been a major supporter of Chafee in the past and whose son was Chafee's speechwriter. In the meantime, Verica said, the campaign of the frontrunner in the Democratic race, Hillary Rodham Clinton, has called to ask for his support. I wish him well, Verica said. He must have a strategy in mind. He needs the support beyond Rhode Island to take on that campaign. Yes, Link, we here in Rhode Island have an excellent strategy. It's called an exit strategy, and we don't mean via the White House.
Governor Raimondo seems tempted to follow Governor Chafee down a fiscal rabbit hole. The Chafee administration was quick to hop on the Obamacare bandwagon. It committed Rhode Island taxpayers to footing the bill for Health Source RI, the state-run exchange for matching prospective clients with the insurance providers who could cover them. Turns out that in the next fiscal year, the cost of operating that site, after all federal subsidies, comes to around $25 million. As longtime viewers of this broadcast already know, we haven't got the money. In the private sector, that fact alone would be all that decision makers needed to hear. In the topsy-turvy world of Gina and Wonderland, however, nothing is that simple. It seems our new governor is still seriously considering taking on this obligation and paying for it through more deficit spending. The Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity has studied the economics of the healthcare exchange question extensively. They have published a fact-filled synopsis of that work. Their findings? Governor Chafee's executive order establishing the exchange explicitly prohibits the use of general state funds. There is no other viable local funding source. There appears to be no legal barrier or other provision in the Federal Affordable Care Act barring such a transfer, and the state of Hawaii is already doing it. There will be no loss of benefits to the policyholders, and the federal exchange operates at a much lower cost per employee. In addition, the state may need to return unspent federal funds, but will not have to repay any of those it already has. Finally, Rhode Island can achieve real budget savings if it does this. Common sense urges the governor to take the cost-saving step of abandoning Health Source Rhode Island. On her own, take it on her own. It would demonstrate her real political courage and commitment to saving taxpayers' dollars. If she does not, the upcoming ruling of the U.S. Supreme Court in the case involving state versus federal health care exchanges may make the decision for her. Take the shot, Governor. Show us what you've got. Liz?
And now let's check in with the Rhode Island Republican caucus at the State House to see what they're up to this week.
Common Sense TV here with Representative Sherry Roberts, House District 29. Representative, you recently attended a House Oversight Committee meeting where Kevin Flynn from the Department of Planning gave testimony on his Roadmap RI, which is now the official state guide plan. There seems to be some inconsistencies. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
There sure are. There are many Democrats and Republicans from right here within this state who feel that this roadmap plan comes directly from Washington, D.C., which Kevin Flynn denies. However, we do know that each town's local comprehensive plans must be consistent with the state guide plan. And a part of that is a roadmap. And that roadmap plan is put into place with HUD money from the federal government. And that means that we must follow their standards in order to keep that money. And if we don't, HUD can turn around and change the requirements at any time. Anything could change at any time. They can become as aggressive as they want. And it does make you wonder, what interest does the federal government have in our local municipalities?
As a representative for all people in your district, is there a mechanism that you could use to offer some sort of protection for those constituents?
Well, yes, I'm introducing Bill H. 6040, and what that will do is, and this is just one piece of it because there are several pieces going in by other members of the Republican caucus, but mine is 6040, and that would allow people, cities and towns to opt out of the roadmap.
Sense TV here with Representative Gia Russo. We understand you have a bill before committee that would allow a tax-free holiday, much like they do in Massachusetts. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
I'd be happy to. It's really, the bill is labeled Buy Local Rhode Island, and it's designed to help Rhode Island merchants to have a tax-free holiday that's exactly like the one that they have in Massachusetts, that they developed over a few years ago, just to help out the Massachusetts merchants. And it really is a good economic boom, and we're trying to do the same thing in Rhode Island. We have lots of people in Rhode Island that go to Massachusetts, they're waiting, they put that in their calendar, and then on that day they're all going to buy they're doing their major purchases. And I know we do have laws that you're supposed to report those things, but I don't see long lines outside of the Rhode Island Division of Taxation for people who are going to pay their taxes on such purchases. So it's just something to help the Rhode Island merchants out. And it's really that simple. And I really hope it passes. We need something like that.
Is there a particular date that you would like to see this tax holiday? Is there something in mind?
The thing in mind is the first week or so in August, but I would make it exactly the same day as Massachusetts, just so we don't lose our sales to Massachusetts. So for them it'll be a big help from their own citizens, and for us it'll be our own citizens. Obviously, it won't impact the other border that Massachusetts may have, New Hampshire, because they have tax-free day every day.
Rhode Island Secretary of State dismissed the cases of 2 people accused of lobbying violations in the 38 Studios deal this week and closed an investigation into ex-Boston Red Sox pitcher Curt Schilling. Secretary of State Nellie Gorbea said it was important to move from frustration to solutions. She wants to overhaul the state's lobbying laws so any potential violations can be effectively investigated and fairly prosecuted in the future. It's not in our state's best interest to spend taxpayer dollars on protracted litigation that could never do the crime justice, Gorbea said. We here at Common Sense have the entire list of questions we'd still like the answers to. We're currently living on hunches here. Yes, Nellie, you did get one thing right. You said could never do the crime justice. Yes, it is a crime that the door is getting shut on one of Rhode Island's most egregious schemes, and we appear to be on the cusp of another for strike two. The Rhode Island State Legislature is trying to amend the U.S. Constitution again. Are you kidding me? With the introduction of Senate Bill 517, Senators Miller and Golden are once again attempting to gut the Second Amendment by placing inflammatory titles on popular firearms and then limiting their design by fiat just to make them go away. The bill defines most semi-automatic rifles as assault weapons. No one with any military experience would accept that definition, but the senators are really just interested in vilifying the equipment as a dodge against dealing with Rhode Islanders' constitutional rights. This is just a start. What's next? Where does it end? Eventually, this hot glue gun would become a hotty-melty stick-em-where-you-want-em thing. Or you, too, can be arrested for eating this .22 caliber Pop-Tart by eating it the wrong way. Or will there be an outright ban on finger-pointing? A different finger comes to mind right now, but I digress. What would such military-style firearms be used for, they intone, trying to subliminally suggest that no right-minded gun owner would need this kind of equipment? What uses do these guns be put to, you ask? All lawful purposes, I say. We already have plenty of laws banning bad behavior with or without weapons. This bill attempts to take the decision away from individuals entirely by banning the hardware. Newsflash, Senators, it's the right to make that very decision that's the important part of the Second Amendment. In fact, the Constitution of both the United States and the state of Rhode Island are there to protect citizens from exactly this kind of government overreach, no matter how well intended its sponsors might claim it is. Are you kidding me?
Hello, welcome to Common Sense. This is a program where we try to make sense out of the policies that affect your life.
Common Sense is on each week on Verizon Channel 34 or Cox Channel 15, Saturdays at 4 p.m., Sundays at 10 a.m. You can also find us online at www.commonsenseri.org. Join our host, Representative Patricia Morgan, each week as she brings you a variety of experts from the financial or small business community, government policy experts, town councilors, and members of our state General Assembly to discuss the issues that affect your life. We review the news of the week from our own perspective with Elizabeth Smith and Luis Vargas. We hear from Jeff Richard, who always brings us some interesting insight, and where we always ask the question, are you kidding me? So remember to join us on Verizon Channel 34 or Cox Channel 15, Saturdays at 4 p.m. and Sundays at 10 a.m., or online at www.commonsenseri.org, on Facebook and our YouTube channel, Common Sense, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter at CommonSenseRI.
Welcome to Common Sense Rhode Island. This is a program where we try to make sense out of the policies that affect your life and come up with common sense solutions. And today we have with us Bill McCourt. He is the Executive Director of the Rhode Island Manufacturers Association. Over the past, well, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be
Thank
here.
you for coming today.
I'm looking for a great discussion, and hopefully we can get into some of our challenges.
That's right. Bill and RIMA, which is another name for the Rhode Island Manufacturers Association, has undertaken a huge challenge in improving our career and technical education, and improving it by allowing our employers to actually interface or discuss or become involved in career and technical education, to actually be an advisory and helpmate to career and technical education.
That's very true.
And in the last session in 2014, there was actually a very substantial bill that was passed that is actually kind of kicking into gear now.
Correct.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I'll back up and talk a little bit about the challenges. I think for all too long, the business community has been a little bit absent or not as involved as it should be in the education process. That's not to say there aren't companies that haven't donated time and effort, so on and so forth. I work with some of them every day. But what we were seeing is the manufacturing sector, like any other sector, is really, really hurting for people. Our industry is in need of people where we've got companies that are growing. and can't find the right talent. And how do we get more involved? And it is self-serving to a degree, because we are looking for workers, but we also have children that need a career pathway and they need a career direction. So how do we work together to make both of those goals work?
So you have jobs out there, and good paying jobs with
Absolutely.
futures, but you can't find the students or the young people to fill them.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, nationwide, the estimates are there are about 600,000 open jobs in manufacturing today. There are expecting retirements approaching about 25% of the workforce will be retiring over the next 5 to 10 years. So we need to replace those workers. So there's a definitive need, and we're talking about jobs that can easily pay $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year at the early stages and up from there. So there's a lot of potential.
So not all minimum wage clickety-clack machines.
No, those jobs, through the outshoring, and again, that's part of what gave us the image that we have today, that a lot of the parents and grandparents had lost jobs in manufacturing because of offshoring the products. So a lot of those low-task, low-wage jobs went overseas, and with technology advancements today, we'll never see them coming back.
Okay.
But with technology changes, the bar has been raised on the capabilities of the person that's working in current manufacturing.
Okay, so you were telling me about an initiative that RIMA is supporting or has joined, which is called Dream It, Do It.
Correct.
Sounds like a good name, so tell me about it.
It is. And again, this effort was coordinated by the National Manufacturing Institute in D.C., which is a sister organization to the National Association of Manufacturers. Rhode Island last spring became, I believe it was the 28th state to participate in this program. And it's a nationwide career awareness initiative for manufacturers. So it's how do we collectively join forces to have a unified message to the young adults and the children about the career pathways and opportunities that lie ahead for them in manufacturing.
In manufacturing. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the legislation, and I know you worked very hard for quite a few years on this. Tell me a little bit about it, what its purpose is, where it's going.
Again, the goal is to how do we gauge business and what we've learned, and again, this is not a RIMA initiative. We were a big player in this, but even our effort might have been dwarfed by those of others. Gary Azofsky, Bob Baldwin, Ron Caniglia, the entire Rhode Island Business Coalition, which is the chambers and hospitality and so on and so forth, were all involved behind
Okay, so all
getting
kinds
this
of
thing
jobs,
done.
all kinds of career paths.
Pathways, and all with similar challenges. We're all in need of finding quality people to get into career pathways that we offer for children at a time where education in college becomes an affordability issue, not so much of an academic issue or a capability, it's affordability.
Well, and it's not just affordability, is it? Some students are very well suited to college, other students aren't, and I'm not saying that they're not educable, all right?
No, understood.
But they do better with hands-on or mechanical jobs or any number of things. Not every job needs college to be a good job.
That's correct. That's correct. And that's part of the initiative is how do we elevate these programs? The Career and Tech Initiative, while perhaps getting off on the wrong foot with some of the Career and Tech directors, we did learn and engage them over time, and they understand that and would agree that their programs are good programs, but they need to be elevated. The perceptions need to be higher. They need better equipment. They need cutting-edge curriculum. And our goal is how do we tie the business community into that, because they are going to be the employers. The business community at the end of the day, and it's kind of tough to say, they're the consumer.
Okay.
The children is the product, and I'm not trying to dehumanize
No, I know
the
that.
children. I have 3 myself, but they're the product that are going through the system, so we're trying to do product improvement.
Okay?
And
Spoken like a manufacturer.
Spoken like a manufacturer. So how do we have that? And that child may go on, just because they go to Career and Tech, they may go on to some of the best colleges and universities
That's right.
in the country. However, if they don't, again, affordability or maybe they don't want to do it, how do we set them up in the best possible framework to succeed in career?
Well, okay. One of your models I know was the Worcester Vocational Career and Technical School. You want to tell us a little bit about that? I actually visited that last spring and was very, very impressed with it. And I know that's a model that you would like to see repeated here.
That's correct. I mean, it's a very, very impressive facility. It's not necessarily about bricks and mortar. However, it's a
It's a
beautiful,
very beautiful building.
It's I believe, a $70 or $90 million facility. But it's about the internal workings of the building. It's about committed teachers. It's about children that attend that school, who want to attend that school. They're there by choice. It's high caliber and high quality programs with high interaction. There are over 350 businesses engaged with that.
350 businesses
engaged in that, whether
who
it's automotive.
advise and help and donate.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They are in the classroom helping with curriculum development. They're mentoring the students. They're providing internship opportunities for students. They're providing extern opportunities for the teachers to go out and work in their facilities during the summer months for pay, to understand and better relate to the students back in the classrooms. And and again, part of the model that we liked was the 501c3 charitable trust.
But before you go on to that, you had told me some really very positive results from the Worcester model. The number of kids graduating and going on to college and stuff. You want to share that with our viewers?
I'd be happy to. Worcester Career Tech is one of 5 public high schools. And if you go through their demographics, they have the highest graduation rates, the highest test scores. This is across gender. This is across race. It really is completely wide open, and it's one of the highest performing schools in the state of Massachusetts.
And we would certainly like that here in Rhode Island.
We would love to have that here in Rhode Island.
All right, so before we go on, we're going to take a little break now.
Is the legislature trying to make amends with the cities and towns for revenue sharing cuts solely on the backs of the 1%ers? Would that even work? Are you kidding me? Senate Bill number 472 proposes to divert all state income tax revenue from any personal income amount above $250,000 to close the yawning gap in state aid transfers that the legislature itself has created in the last few years. This measure would establish 2 new restricted receipt accounts under control of the General Treasury. Each would get 50% of the vigorish collected by this change in tax policy. One account would be shared with the cities and towns on the basis of population as regular state revenue sharing for their general funds. The other would be earmarked exclusively for support of the construction of public schools. It should be noted that the bill's new tables for computing state income tax on these higher incomes has also increased dramatically. So what's this all about? Because the legislature has failed to budget anything for its own pension and post-employment benefit obligations for decades, it has had to cut state aid to municipalities. To still the wailing and moaning and gnashing of teeth that now emanates from the 39 jurisdictions who have seen that huge cut in their income, the legislature has had to throw them a fish. Well, it's a pretty big fish, ladies and gentlemen. This plan effectively caps state revenues from the income tax at a hard dollar figure. What's that going to mean in the out years? It also adds a good deal more fuel to the economic propulsion mechanism that's ejecting our highest earners out into the surrounding states. Not to mention that it strips this high-end revenue from consideration for any other spending priority. Senator Satchel is the author of this bill. Sir, do you regard this kind of knee-jerk reaction as good management of the public funds? Are you kidding me?
What do I stand for? What do I stand for? Most nights I don't know anymore.
Our guest today is Bill McCourt from the Rhode Island Manufacturers Association. And Bill, before we talk anything more about the career and technical education, tell me about RIMA.
I'd be happy to. RIMA was formed about 20 years ago by a group of manufacturing business owners and managers, essentially to help elevate the image of manufacturing and help focus on the problems and the challenges of manufacturing. We all think we're special, and I think manufacturing does have unique challenges, whether it's regulatory, legislatively. Initially, that was our primary focus. And then over the last several years, because workforce challenges both here in Rhode Island for manufacturers as well as nationally for manufacturers, a lot of our effort and focus has gone into career development, career awareness, as well as workforce development. So we partner with the Governor's Workforce Board as the workforce partner, and we do a lot of manufacturing training programs. We work closely with the colleges and university for worker training programs, and we work a lot with the unemployed community trying to get them jobs. And we've been very, very successful, especially over the last couple of years in doing that.
Yeah, you know, my parents, my grandparents were immigrants. and manufacturing was their way to hit the American dream, right? You can come, you can start at an entry-level position and work your way up and have a really good life. And one of the things that we have been always very worried about is that manufacturing has been slipping away from Rhode Island. Because it's a very good way for our new citizens and our existing citizens to get better lives.
Absolutely.
How is manufacturing doing here in Rhode Island?
Manufacturing is doing, I'd love to say we're alive and well, but we're alive and doing okay.
So how many members do you have?
Right, today there are about 1,500 manufacturing companies in the state of Rhode Island, and that does not necessarily include the maker community, which is the next generation of manufacturers. Most of my efforts personally have been focused on the manufacturers. 41,000 employees, which is still about 10%, almost 10% of the private sector workforce.
Would certainly love to grow that, though.
Oh, absolutely. And the jobs that we provide are more challenging jobs because of technology. The rates of pay have gone up, so these are good quality jobs, clean workplaces. It's not this dark, dirty, dingy, dangerous work environment. They're
not the mills
challenging
anymore,
jobs.
sure.
They're good pay. Manufacturers across the country pay above average in terms of benefits. So when you look at health insurance and dental insurance, which are very, very expensive today, manufacturing entities outperform most other business sectors, with the exception of probably the white-collar sector, in terms of providing benefits to families. So something that can really give people a good, solid middle class. And I know the governor is very, very intent on rebuilding our middle class, and that can lie a large part in manufacturing.
In manufacturing, exactly. So you manufacturers have combined with other parts of the business community to do this career and technical education initiative. Where does that stand today?
Well, the legislation was passed last June. We had made a fair number of enemies, unfortunately, in the process.
Okay. There's always initial challenges.
There's always challenges, and we knew going in this was going to be a great challenge. We immediately started to...
You had told me that most of the directors of the Career and Technical Centers actually came and testified against the bill.
Correct. And I'll give you a quick, for instance, the principal of Davies, Vicki, testified immediately before me in the House hearing and talked about how great Davies is. It's a blue ribbon school. I serve on an advisory board at Davies. It is a great school. It's got great teachers. And it's, quite frankly, part of the model that we want to adopt in the state. And my testimony, I was fortunate enough to be right after her, and my testimony was, I live in Lincoln. My kids in surrounding neighborhoods have the opportunity to go to Davies. But the kids in the East Bay or Aquidneck Island or South County do not have a Davies to go to. They have career and tech centers.
They don't have a blue ribbon.
But they don't have a center where the entire focus of the school is on developing those students in the career and tech programs. They have other interests, rightfully so. They have a greater population of students going on to college or not wanting to go into career and tech pathways. So that's the 90% that are going to drive the equation. And I understand that, and I completely agree with it. But we're trying to elevate career and tech, so we need to bring that out, bring that together. Davies is a state school, and we think that's the right model. We want to elevate it to a statewide level because the schools across the state should be similar. The programs, the curriculum should be similar. And how do we do that?
So what did you do to allay the fears or the resistance of those directors?
Well, we immediately did an outreach effort. And again, this wasn't RIMA, this was the Business Coalition that did this. We were just a part player in this, a bit player. We engaged the career and tech teachers. We started meeting with them. We started meeting with the folks at RIDE again, all through their career pathway folks. We met independently. We met collectively. Neil Steinberg and the Rhode Island Foundation brought us together for a great work session, strategy session. And over a period of only a couple of months, I think, the career and tech teachers or directors understood that we were there to support them, that we weren't out to close the centers, that we weren't out to fire all the directors. We have good programs, good teachers. How do we elevate? And we're there to support and complement them and elevate them. And I think so now we've been working collectively with them on that effort.
Great. There are two pieces now that you've been working on under this legislation. You're actually just now with the governor appointing people, you're actually now getting moving, right? So tell me first, I guess, about the advisory board. That's one of the pieces.
Yeah, the two elements is there's a trust, a 501c3 charitable trust, as well as an advisory board. The advisory board is the larger of the two. I actually am the one member that serves on both the trust and the advisory board, and again, that's to provide continuity between the two organizations. But the advisory board essentially is to focus on the internal workings. They've got to deal with transportation challenges. They have to deal with curriculum challenges, and work with the schools when a school wants to adopt in. This is not we can go out and take all the schools. This is schools elect to become part of our program. That's part of the challenge. So the initial efforts will be when a school is kind of onboarding, there's a 1-year timeline to determine how we're going to make that transition happen. Working with the curriculum and so on and so forth. So that's what the advisory board's function is, to essentially work on the inner workings of transportation, curriculum, so on and so forth.
So if a school says that they're interested, then the advisory board works with them to make sure that it's a good fit, that the programs are developed.
If a school wants to come in, then we will agree to bring them in and work with them to make it happen, essentially. We're going to work with the teachers, and we're going to make sure that these programs work effectively and efficiently, and what are the logistical challenges and how do we make that transition work.
Okay. I think we're going to take a break right now, and we'll be right back.
It's happening all over the education system throughout the country. Let's spread the guilt around. Are you kidding me? This week, the Providence Journal published an opinion piece by Barrington Jr. Madeline Kahn. In it, she delivers a very scary message that's beginning to resonate in schools everywhere. Quote, "The historical, cultural, and political dynamics of the United States were designed and maintained to consistently provide whites an advantage at the expense of people of color. By virtue of being the recipients of such benefits, irrespective of our individual prejudices or lack thereof, the white population is racist. Yes, all white Americans are inherently racist." Unquote. That's a rather strong statement, Ms. Kahn. Let's not forget the progressives out there are tainting education in the false name of fairness. You have become one of their casualties with this rhetoric. The reality is, progressives are only interested in the control of the population, not its improvement. Baltimore and Detroit are perfect examples of where this philosophy has been in place at the peril of these communities. The black community has made many strides over the decades. We have a black president, numerous politicians, CEOs, and Hollywood elite are African American. So please, don't speak for me. I am white, and I am not a racist. I like everyone, and I believe this country was founded on the basis of faith in oneself and individual achievement for hard work. Some just don't want to do the work to succeed, Madeline. There are many more like me, of all races, who still believe in the American dream. You'll think differently when you're on your own one day and you wonder where half your paycheck went. All white people are racist? Are you kidding me?
Welcome back. Today we're having a discussion with Bill McCourt of the Rhode Island Manufacturers Association. They have become involved very heavily with the Career and Technical Education Initiative that's just now getting launched in Rhode Island, which will make our vocational and career training for our young people much better, much more robust, and where there's much more of a connection between education and careers.
Absolutely.
And careers that are available.
Real jobs at the end of the rainbow.
At the end of the journey.
Yes.
We had just talked about the advisory board and what their part of this puzzle is, but there's also a 501c3. Would you tell my viewers about this, because this is a very innovative and really good way to get our employers and education involved with one another.
Absolutely, and Pat, that was a model that was very, very effective in what they did in Worcester with the Worcester Career and Tech Center. They set up a 501c3, which we had as part of the legislation here. And the goal of the 501c3 is employer and business outreach. They are the interface. They will be looking for donations of money for folks that want to get involved in this, equipment that can be donated to this. And when I
Any
say
equipment?
well, I'm not going to. Thank you for asking. Not any equipment. This is not to make the career and tech centers the dumping ground for things that people want to get rid of. Now, there is value for the students in the centers to work and build and help rebuild and maintain equipment. So there is a place to use some of this equipment. But we're looking for companies that will work with the businesses and the vendors for those businesses, and maybe strong arm to a degree some of the suppliers of some of this equipment to the need to help work with us. Suggest, a better point. Suggest that their equipment in these career and tech centers, which is state-of-the-art type of equipment that they will see in real work, real industry, is important. And then I think the other parts are employers to do internships or make internships available, which are going to be critical in the junior, but certainly the senior year of high school students, in externships for teachers. Getting the teachers out of the classroom in the summer, working for some of these companies, be it a manufacturer, be it an automotive shop, depending upon what the teacher teaches, would be extremely valuable in taking those lessons back to the classroom. So I think that's the other integral part.
That real world experience that many teachers just don't have. They've been in classrooms their whole life. They haven't worked in a
And Worcester, Worcester has 350 businesses engaged with the career and tech centers. Again, crossing the spectrum of industry, whether it's automotive or their veterinary program that they run with Tufts they have Tufts teachers from the veterinary school. They have students in the college going on for veterinary, working with high school students on real live animals.
I
mean,
saw
it's
that
amazing.
program when I was up there. They also had a graphic design program that I thought was incredible. The students were actually making posters with screen printing and real things that they're really doing that are valuable. It's not just playtime. It's real work.
Well, it's also
they're learning real skills.
Part of what is going to be integral to a successful system, and what they've done very well up there, is to not compete with those businesses. You can't create an automotive repair facility that's going to compete with the auto shops that are doing this for a living. So they found that balance. So they work with the folks that may be on the affordability challenge level, that they have a car, they have a clunker, but it really doesn't run and they can't afford to get it fixed. So what do? They can take it to the high school. Now, when they take it to the high school on Monday, they may not have the car on Tuesday. They may not be told when they're going to have the car, but they'll have it within a few days. But they have to understand that that's part of the challenge. And again, they have the students in the print program are printing stationery and business cards for the police department and the fire department and so on and so forth. So they find a way of working together. Again, it's the low-income community.
Not competing with one another.
The low-income community are the ones that are bringing their pets to the clinic for the veterinary services because they can't afford to go to a vet.
Okay.
So it works. It's worked. Again, it's taken years to develop, but they have it working. We have a model to start borrowing from, and I think that's what we'll be looking for.
And I think one of the things that is so important about the 501c3 is manufacturers are communicating then to the education community, these are the things we need. Right? These are the kinds of jobs we have. Right? Don't train students for jobs that aren't there.
Right. And as such, when the legislation was constructed and we were looking at the composition of the Board of Trustees as well as the advisory board, it was very, very important to us that Scott Jensen, as the Director of Labor and Training, is a member of the advisory board, that the Board of Higher Ed is involved. Stefan Pryor, Director of Commerce Secretary, is involved because, again, we need to make sure that we're covering the spectrum so we know what's going on in the other areas. So it's a wide array of business expertise, not just manufacturing, it's educational expertise, and there are other agencies that are involved in it, as well as some of the state employees, which are going to be integral to the process.
Great. You had, today, our career and technical centers in Rhode Island are generally 3-year programs. And you had said that you foresee it being a 4-year program, but the freshman and the sophomore year will be more academics with more or less giving them experiencing like a visiting the different programs.
Well, again, I think Davies is a great school.
Okay.
It's a blue ribbon school. We have it. When Davies was built in the 70s, it was one of, at the time, we planned to be 5 or 6 statewide schools. we looked at it and we said, you know what, that was the right model. We built Davies and abandoned the plan, unfortunately. So what we would love to see is, and I think this is a very, very important element, is that they are comprehensive schools within themselves, so the students have their academics in the same building, and it's all integrated with the career and tech program. So I think that's an important element that has to be brought to the table. And it's also run by a board of advisors that answers to the state of Rhode Island and the Department of Education. So there's not the local school committee, which has other challenges. It's not the local superintendent who has other challenges. We're bringing these things out. And I think eventually what we envision is statewide level advisory boards. I have schools that want manufacturing advisory boards. And I'm on one at Davies, I'm at one at Providence Career Tech. They all involve 9 or 10 businesses. To do that at every one of the 10 career and tech centers, I would have to get 100 manufacturers involved in the state. And even then, there's no assurance that they're going to be cohesive. I envision a statewide manufacturing advisory board of 10 people, say, that will look at statewide programs in manufacturing and make sure they're coordinated. That's one of our goals. And not just manufacturing, again, the other business sectors.
So that students in one school get alike.
Curriculum's aligned, the programs are aligned.
Same really good opportunities.
Absolutely.
So if we had 4-year schools, the 9th and 10th graders would be allowed to kind of look at the programs before they chose them.
Correct.
Then what happens when they graduate? Do you have a continuum there in mind?
Oh, absolutely. At Davies, again, they do a freshman exploratory. They do a rotation of all the programs. They see what they want. They elect in, and they go through a program. But some of these things, there's 3 eventual outcomes, I think. One will be the student will go on to college.
On to college.
So then that's a viable alternative.
Engineering, sure.
They could, depending upon what the requirements are of the occupation, go directly into a job.
Okay.
Or there may be an intermediary step. In manufacturing, it might be a CNC program, certificate program at CCRI. It may be a nursing program that's upstream. So there are other certificate programs. So again, I think the public education system, post-secondary, whether it's CCRI, URI, Rhode Island College, all have to play an integral role in what's going to happen after the kid graduates.
From the time they're in the program until they get a job, you've got
it's K through 20 system.
Coordination for them.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to take another break and do a segment on Are You Kidding Me?
Extra, read all about it. Senate to legislate increased rates for professional childcare with the money to come from thin air. Are you kidding me? That's right. Senate Bill 484, sponsored by Senators Crowley, Metz, and Golden, hard codes rate increases for childcare providers both in-home and at standalone centers. Even better, these increases are to be awarded based on merit. So now DCYF will be lobbied by every organized childcare provider, and that's all of them, to try to get on the good list by hook or crook. Have these senators checked to see who pays for virtually all certified childcare in Rhode Island? Spoiler alert, it's you and me, the taxpayers. Have these senators checked to see what the state's operating deficit is these days? Spoiler alert, it's pretty big. Have these senators checked to see what they themselves will do when merit increases start being handed out to those without merit? I'd say the answer to all of these questions is no. Meanwhile, Senate Bill 470 raises the eligibility for subsidized childcare from its present 180% of the federal poverty level to 225% of it. And 2 of that bill's sponsors are also on this one. Childcare is a critical asset for the working poor. If the state is going to provide that asset to needy citizens, it has a fiduciary responsibility to do so in an efficient manner. That's not happening today. And the solution being proposed by these senators is to increase the number of Rhode Islanders who can claim it while simultaneously increasing the cost per instance without any regard to the fact that the budget's already in deficit? Are you kidding me?
Today we're talking with Bill McCourt of the Rhode Island Manufacturers Association about career and technical education and how he and the Business Coalition, the Rhode Island Business Coalition, have become very involved in connecting businesses, jobs, schools, and our students, our children. So you have some really big plans here.
Absolutely.
And when you have really big plans, there's going to be some significant challenges going forward. What kind of challenges do you foresee?
Well, I think first this is going to be it's going to be a long journey. I have said to people that this may not happen in my lifetime, but it needs to start.
It'll go faster.
No, we'll make progress because you know what? There are so many great people at the state level, at the school level, and in the business community that are destined to make sure this happen. So I think it's going to happen. It's a process and it's a journey, and I think people have to have realistic expectations. As I mentioned, we have had a number of meetings, both prior to the legislation being passed with RIDE, so we wanted to understand how does transportation work in the state of Rhode Island? How does the state decide what child goes to what career and tech center now? What programs exist in the career and tech centers now? Where is there duplication? Where are the efforts disjointed? So we're going to start. So now, as we start to peel away the onion, a lot more of those problems come up. We have, for instance, transportation districts that do not match the sending districts of CTE schools. So we can have a child in one community that's assigned to one school, but that school is not in their transportation district. There's 5 transportation districts, there's 10 career and tech centers. And so it doesn't sound like it should be that hard to get them to match, but I'm sure there are some reasonable reasons.
Problems, right.
But there's all the, you know as well as I do, and it's not just Rhode Island, this is the way we've always done it. We're always going to be faced with those challenges. So
I think also I had heard, for instance, that down in the Newport area, there's a career technical center that had a big manufacturing module or a program.
Right.
Well, what if a student in Coventry or West Warwick wanted to get into that module? It wasn't duplicated.
Right.
So it's about actually making sure that there is access to the different programs.
It's access, it's balance, it's demand. So do the eventual jobs when we're looking out 10 years. Are the jobs there to justify, and how many programs are justified? I think it's part of the challenge. So once you determine how many programs, there may not be enough jobs. Now I find this hard to believe in manufacturing that there will not be enough jobs. We're going to have 10,000 people retiring, and our sector is growing. In the 10,000 people retiring over the next 5 to 10 years.
So you do projections out there when you figure out where the jobs are being created.
Right, and it's by occupation.
Okay.
And I think
can you look out that far for 5, 10, 20 years?
Obviously, a lot of it is based upon what we have now and where trends are going, and it's based on national data more so than local data. So it's not we're polling our local manufacturers, but it's based upon where national trends and where they're seeing job growth. Like CNC machinists are something that is where we have some good programs today. We're seeing job growth there.
I know, talking with some of the business folks I talk with, they need industrial mechanics, they need injection molding and plastics people, and we chemical engineers, we simply don't have enough here.
We don't, and manufacturers, for instance, have found that they will take a child in an automotive program, coming through one of the programs in automotive, and they'll hire them to be a CNC machinist or an injection molder or something like that, because there's a core level of competency that's built into the program where they learn to work with their hands, and they have that mindset and mechanical aptitude that is a great foundation to almost anything they want to do. So the career pathways get really interesting when you get out there.
So you give them a good foundation in the high school. They can go on to CCRI and get a certificate program, or on to college and get even more education, but it's about starting them on the right path.
Starting them on the right path, and it's absolutely not about not going to college. We are trying to design a system and a program that will attract the best and the brightest. That there isn't, Worcester can take, and I don't know this to be actually fact, but if the best and brightest individual in the city of Worcester who wants to become a vet can go to a career and tech school as opposed to a traditional high school as a pathway, I mean, that's a testament that it is about going to college, but again, career readiness.
Which you had alluded to before, that is one of the challenges,
yes.
Is changing people's perception about what career education is.
Absolutely.
It's not just kids going and doing the auto body class or automotive class.
It's not a club.
Mechanics is good,
right? Absolutely.
Because it's a good foundation, but there's so many other professions that they can get into.
So, and part of it, Pat, is we may look at, does the name Career and Tech Center work for us? Gary Ozovsky came out with this thing saying maybe we should call them Applied Learning Centers. I love that name.
Oh, right.
I really do, and I'll give credit to Gary on that because, part of it may have to be a little bit of a rebranding because I think we've created a system today, and again, not to the fault of the career and tech directors or teachers,
That's right.
but it's a perception that career and tech is for the bottom performance. These kids are not
These
going to
kids
college.
don't do well in academics.
So
That's
we're
right.
just going to send them off to there, and it does prepare kids for those career opportunities that don't want to go to college. Don't get me wrong, but it gets back to the perception that that's not what it's all about. That's part of what it's about, but it's not all of it. It can be more challenging learning.
It can be all of the final pathways,
Right.
straight into a job,
Right.
into a certificate program, into college.
It's
It
very
can be
heavy,
all.
very, very heavy academic load, but a very, very demanding real workplace load. I mean, we're talking about one of the things that makes Diamond Voc Tech in Fall River. They send most of their kids in their machining program to Rhode Island companies. Most of those students in their junior and senior years come to work for Rhode Island companies in Providence and
Wow.
Cranston and East Providence.
Okay.
But they have a week about. And the week about program, which I think is another integral part, is each student spends 1 day in academics and 1 day in their career field. And that 1 day could be an internship. So a company has an employee full time and they pair them up with a counterpart. So a company has a person, an A and a B. They have person A in week 1 and person B in week 2, and they flip-flop their academics. They have to have certain grades.
I
They
think
have
we're
to
getting
have
down into the
transportation.
weeds here, so I'm going
Well,
to...
I don't know if we're getting down into weeds, but this is part of the goals. This is
we're
part of our
almost out of
challenge.
time, and I want to ask you one
Okay.
question before we wrap up. This is a big, big project. It's a multi-year project. There's so many moving pieces. There's so many people who are going to give you pushback. It's about changing the way we do business, and we know in Rhode
Right.
Island it's
Absolutely.
the way we've always done it. Why did you do this?
Well, that's a great question. And this is kind of a personal thing for me. I come from a family of educators, but to me, part of it's job-driven, that I have to worry about making sure that companies in Rhode Island have the workforce they need to succeed. So it's about driving the economy. And if we're not preparing our businesses, be it manufacturers or others, with the right people, then they're going to leave and they're going to go elsewhere, and that drives our economy. So that's part of the challenge. But my feeling is we've been talking about this, and people have recognized the need, and we never knew where to start. And we decided that we can't keep talking about it. We need to start someplace. So if we don't start now, then when? So now's the time. So let's get in there. And again, I'm surrounded by some really great people, and let's just start making it happen. The advisory boards are great. The trust and the advisory board, we had our first inaugural meeting last Friday at Davies Tech and included a tour. And we decided that we're going to have combined meetings over the next several months to make sure that we really give this a solid foundation of working going forward. So it's incredibly exciting. It really, really is. And it's going to be a lot of frustration, but it's going to be worth it in the long run.
Well, you certainly have the enthusiasm for it, and thank goodness for you, because our state needs this, but our young people need this, so that they have really good lives.
They do,
So
absolutely.
thank you very much,
it's been
and
a
I
pleasure.
hope you can keep up the level of enthusiasm.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. And it's been a real pleasure. I love the opportunity. And if anybody has questions, they can get in touch with me at RIMA. 401-751-0160. If you're a company that wants to get involved, I'll give out my cell because it's worth it to me, 401-258-6553. If you want to get involved in the business community, let me know. You don't have to just be a manufacturer. We'll match you up with the right people.
And I think we can stop there. Please get involved. This is important to everybody. Thank you for coming, or for listening.
Thank you.
Each year, U.S. News publishes its list of how our public schools compare against each other across the country. And other sources like the Bush's Institute compare how we do against the rest of the civilized world. And then there are the countless groups that use all of the available educational data to support business models that attract us to their websites. One of the better of these is the Neighborhood Scout site. These folks have all of the available data on any neighborhood in the United States of America that you and I might like to live in or not. And they have all the data about everybody who lives there. It is quite impressive to see how much the real estate folks really know about all of us. So, I ventured into the world of comparative education and would like to share just a small portion of what I found out. Now, here is the plain truth about public education in Rhode Island. It doesn't compare very well nationally or internationally. Surprise. And why is that important to us? Now, we hear that the middle class is leaving Rhode Island. We hear that there are not enough job opportunities to attract learned souls to keep paying employment. Good paying jobs they want. We hear that business doesn't like Rhode Island. We hear that our political leaders really want to move the state in a new direction. Oh? We see that Deborah Gist is leaving, having tried and failed to make much really of a difference. Now, we hear overpaid teacher union leaders asking the legislature for mandatory arbitration for teaching contracts. Oh, that'd be great. Now, we see our property taxes forever increasing to pay for public schooling and all of the retired teachers. And it goes on. But what if there was a rather simple solution to our education difficulties? Now, just to the north and east of us resides the domain of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. You know, the place you go to buy gas and recycle aluminum cans. Now, geographically, we are very similar. Lots of shoreline and sandy beaches. But when it comes to education, the Commonwealth is light years ahead of us. Now, why is that, you might ask? The 2015 comparison efforts of U.S. News gave me a bit of an insight on this one. U.S. News awards gold and silver rankings to schools that have been most successful in preparing students for college. They use the results of advanced placement testing plus statewide testing. The folks in the Commonwealth got 26 gold and 53 silver medals, representing 22.4% of the 352 schools in their system. How did we do? Well, not so good. We got 1 gold and 4 silvers for a 9.4% of our 53 schools. Doing the math, that's less than half the Commonwealth's success. So what? Well, then I read the real estate industry's reports on the 100 best performing schools in America. I counted 25. That's 1/4 of the total of the best schools, all in Massachusetts. How many Rhode Island schools made that cut? And there were 0. How about a comparison of graduation rates? Well, we do graduate at a 76.4% rate. The folks in Massachusetts do a little better, 81.5. Of course, the folks in Vermont do even better than that at 89.3. I wonder what they know. Can it be that we are behind because we don't pay our teachers enough? Well, instructional spending per student here is $8,645 a year, while nationally it is only $6,260. Well, it seems we're paying our teachers. The salary and benefits in Rhode Island are substantially better than in the Commonwealth. I know this because I have a daughter who's actually teaching in Massachusetts and loves it. So what is it about the Commonwealth that we are in little Rhode Island here might look to emulate? Now, I read a thought-provoking article entitled, quote, Teacher Licensing Reform and the Massachusetts Educational Miracle, unquote. The article talks about one of our favorite topics entitled Common Core Standards. You know, the answer to making all students ready for college? Now, there has been a considerable amount of negative chatter over this one. But most don't know that the folks in Massachusetts had pre-Common Core standards that were greatly higher, resulting in student achievement much better than the national average. Now, but here's the argument that Sandra Stotsky makes in her newest book. She argues that one of the most probable reasons for the Commonwealth's success is the complete redoing of almost every aspect of teacher licensing. Every stage of a teacher's career was linked to new and more demanding testing. It states the obvious. Teachers cannot teach what they do not know. She makes the argument that we have tolerated a weak licensing system for prospective teachers. I recall some time ago reading that our teachers were coming out of the bottom 20% of the URI graduates. Don't know if that's still true. Now, it would be consistent, however, with Ms. Stotsky's claim. So here it is, instead of pushing for binding arbitration for our teachers, the union's leaders should be pushing to raise the bar for licensing. It shouldn't be that hard to learn from the Commonwealth's success and get on with helping our kids compete in the global marketplace. Call your representatives and tell them to stop wasting precious legislative agenda time on nonsense and get to the important stuff. Thank you for watching, and God bless. maybe more than 5.